right, Peter Hyams told the movie production and he wanted to make it westerns, and he said, absolutely not. You cannot make a westerns there. It's a dead genre. You won't make any money. And then he said, how about a western in outer space? And he's like, here's all the money we have.
Yeah. Yeah, it almost feels like there was other westerns that came out like 4 years earlier, maybe a Star Wars or two, that kind of made that fantasy sci-fi western thing actually work. And this film is very different than those, has maybe something more in common with another film that we'll talk about.
Oh yeah, everybody agrees. It's almost, you can say it's in the universe of a certain...
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the alien film that isn't an alien film, Outland, today. Kyle and Nick on Film, join us. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and once again, thanks for watching, thanks for finding us, and then thanks for being a loyal viewer. You can contact the show on Twitter and Instagram. Check out the Patreon for some great deals. Today we're going to talk about a sci-fi from the 80s, and my God, I know In Search of, the Shudder is doing a documentary about sci-fis. This better be one of them they talk about.
It was actually mentioned on their social media right when we decided we were going to talk about this movie, so I'm sure we'll see it in there when that film drops in December. And this is Outland, of course.
Yeah.
Federal Marshal William O'Neill has arrived at the mining colony on Jupiter's moon of Io. William soon discovers that men working at the colony are succumbing to dangerous and violent psychotic episodes. But someone on Io doesn't want him to learn the truth, and William is forced to quickly decide between his family and his duty.
All right, before we get to the meat and everything, I just want to let you know, the first person to die in this movie is John Ratzenberger, who was Cliff Clavin on Cheers. And then the doctor in this movie was Cliff Clavin's mom on Cheers. And then you have one of the deputies in the movie, Norman Chaser, in this movie. But he was also he's also in Empire Strikes Back, where he has a scene with Han Solo, where he's like, well, Luke's still out there, and Han Solo like, why don't you go out and find out and everything? And he just stood there. So that's all the connections you have of, Empire Strikes Back and John Ratzenberger. And I think John Ratzenberger was in Empire Strikes Back as too. He was in that. And he's also in Star Wars. So the guy has an incredible record of being in great movies, even though you don't really notice him a lot. Outland with Sean Connery.
Wow. Yeah, it's an alien movie. So let's start
without aliens.
Let's start with Sean Connery himself, because when you told me Sean Connery on a space station hunting criminals, I was like, I don't see it.
Right.
I mean, I was also the same way when another friend of mine told me, "Oh, you got to watch Zardoz. It's Sean Connery in a fantasy sci-fi."
But that's a different reason why you should watch Zardoz.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't see it, and I still don't see Zardoz after seeing Zardoz. I kind of see Outland after seeing this movie. I see Sean Connery playing the role well. I think this is actually one of his better performances that's not a James Bond.
I agree. Of course, he would go back a couple of years after this and do his last James Bond movie. But yeah, Outland, it fits for him. He doesn't have to do very much. He can just speak the lines. Oh my God, he just can see lines to a TV screen sometimes.
Yeah.
But then you plug in your card. But he does what he does very well, and they use him very well. Another thing I love is the art design and the set. They're just magnificent. I don't know how much they built. Obviously, you watch them up sometimes, you can see them cheat especially with the hallway. You can film there, and then you reverse it, film there. But obviously, they built, like, the bar is really fantastic in this. It's almost like the bar from Clockwork Orange. It's all the black walls and everything. But yeah, very effective use of set. Very effective use of even the mat outside and very matty, flat and everything, but it's still like
it's convincing though.
Yeah,
for 1981, the film is 40 years old, so it is convincing that it kind of lives in that time frame. What I think is interesting is we have Alan Ladd, who left 20th Century Fox to make his own company because he just wasn't getting to make the pictures he wanted to there. And it's interesting that he apparently stole a lot of people that worked on Alien to make this movie. And you see that very capably in the production design. I think everything really looks and feels like Alien, but also I saw a lot of similarities to 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is interesting again because we get Peter Hyams, who would go on to do 2010, the sequel. So I think we get this, again, like, I see a lot of 2001 in this film as well. Not in terms of its overall tonalness.
Not the content, but the look of it.
But some of the look that was involved as well. So there's that kind of structural cohesiveness to a lot of other science fiction that was going on.
And it's very loosely lifted a story based on the Western High Noon, where a marshal, all the bad people are coming to town, and he's looking for help, and nobody's going to help him. And so you get that very loose base story, kind of a Western, but also to make sure that you know it's a Western, you got Sean Connery running around with a shotgun.
Well, and you also said, too, with High Noon, doesn't that also have, I have not seen High Noon, doesn't that also have the man has a wife that wants him to leave?
Yeah, Grace Kelly.
Evacuate town. So we've got that, too. We got the tenuous relationship between him and his wife, his son in the middle here. We see a lot of those elements at play, and it's not something I really got until after seeing the movie. I got what that point was in there.
But it's an effective writing when she can't tell him to his face.
Yeah.
So you have to use screen-on-screen dialogue, which is so 80s, like, all right, she said her line on the screen, now I'm going to go back to it. But right, it's a great movie. And it's neglected because I think because everybody is just it borrows from so many other different movies. It borrows from High Noon, borrows from Alien, borrows from 2001, that you kind of gets neglected.
Well, and see, for me, I see it a little bit differently. Okay. I see it as an okay movie. I didn't love it. I love the production design. I love the way it looked. I love Sean Connery's performance. For me, one of the most important things in a film is, does the story grab me? And I don't think this screenplay did. Part of the reason for it is that it's a film about a stranger in a strange land. He arrives at this place. People are dying. He's going to try and figure out why. We've got this central mystery. And the moment that he was like, people are dying, we have to find out why, I was like, oh, A, B, C. And then A happened. And then B happened. And then C happened. And I felt the film didn't surprise me with anything. Nothing in the story felt like at least an interesting turn. It was all, this is exactly what I thought was going to happen.
And it fills it by having great sets. Because you're doing a chase scene with condensed, compact areas, right?
Yes.
So you can take minutes and minutes and minutes of just follow the scenes and everything, almost like they did with Alien.
Yeah.
Look at all the sets and stuff like that where you're trying to capture the bad guy.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. I like dialogue. The story is kind of borrowed, so it's a little bit simple for you. A little too simple for you.
Yeah.
But I do like the exchange of a convincing character. I understand why Marshall O'Neill wants to stay, where he has every opportunity to flee. I understand that a lot of them, don't want to help him. I understand the raggedy of working in a minefield, the drudgery, the pacing. It's almost like a metropolis of everybody just going to work. Now, like I said, it borrows from a lot of movies, but I still like it. I can still watch it every couple of years.
Yeah, well, I like the central character choice, because when you hear, choose your family or choose your duty to your work, honestly, I mean, it feels like a very simple answer. Of course, I want to take my family. Like, my family is very important to me. But when you have it like this idea that they make the question incredibly difficult to answer, because he has a duty to save lives, to help these men.
Right. And
I think that's the idea, is that he knows, I can save them, but I'm going to lose you in the process. And it's a central idea of, like, which way is he going to go here, and can he have both? And then you have this troublesome relationship with Dr. Lazarus, played by Frances Sternhagen, where she plays a very unlikable, likable person. Again, you
have, like, the
understand
context,
that, and it's funny to think that if I was going to hear someone's the grumpy person in this movie, I'm thinking Sean Connery, and it turns out to be Frances Sternhagen.
So it turns out to be the doctor, right? Another supporting role is Peter Boyle, who kind of looks like a very menacing, but it's like a reserved menacing. He doesn't do outlandish things, doesn't really loud, but understands he has power. Yeah.
He's channeling his inner Marty DeBerge, Rob Reiner from This Is Spinal Tap. He looks just like Rob Reiner in that movie. And if you didn't know that was Peter Boyle, you might have thought it was Rob Reiner. Because, he's again, that's part of what it is, though, is when he shows up on the film, I know where that character is going, and I know where this character is going. And that's kind of, he comes in, he goes, we have the safest place here, nothing bad ever happens. And it's like, the people just died like 10 minutes ago.
I do like the scene where Sean Connery's like, I found your stash. Where very lazy, like, how dare you, all that stuff, but they do it very manipulating, like, one-up volley. So I do like that dialogue exchange as he's playing golf, and of course Sean Connery's going to critique your golf swing.
Yeah. And that's maybe where the connection to Alien feels the most real, is I'm like, is this a subsidiary of Weyland Yutani? Like,
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
very like almost like Alien. It's very reserved bad guys.
Yeah,
until they
and the company men, you know.
Yeah. But you understand if you have to watch Outland to know where we go, evolutionary step of sci-fi horror, and that's Event Horizon. You don't get Event Horizon without this movie.
Yeah, Event Horizon is, I mean, it's a product of many movies. It's Outland, it's Alien, it's Hellraiser, it's a whole bunch of weird
It's Outland meets
being made.
Right when you said it's Hellraiser meets Outland, in outer space. But like costuming and the reason for going outside, because you have to have in a movie. It's outer space. We have to do a battle in outer space.
Yep.
But it's a good convincing reason why we're in outer space.
Well, I like that, he's kind of the slithery snake in outer space, where he's out there kind of like planting traps, and it feels a little Home Alone-ish at times, where he's like, come up and get me.
Yeah. And all of a sudden blow up the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but I like it. It's an enjoyable to watch. Obviously, the low lighting that they do in Alien, we're kind of doing on our set, where you set the light on the ground or set the light on the table, and it lights up that way.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of ceiling. You can see the ceiling, so you can see the ceiling in the movies. John Ford is one of the first directors ever to do movies where you can see the ceiling. Because remember, back in the silence in all the movies in the 1930s, there was no ceiling because you had to move cans and lights and everything. And John Ford was one of his first, for his westerns, could actually show you and convince you there is a ceiling. And I think that's intentional to you, because we're almost like a western, to convince you to show the ceiling. So it's an intentional homage to westerns in the movie. Show the ceiling.
Yeah, it's a good. Not to quote, it's a good way to lay out the space, I guess, so you know where your options are. So
you had to say space.
I wasn't trying to, though. But it felt like kind of the antithesis to when you have like the showdown on the street in the Western, where the two guys meet in the center of town and they're going to have this showdown, because in those films it's very wide open, and you've got these areas where someone could run off to the side, or you have to watch every angle that you've got, whereas in this film everything is, you see the ceilings but they're still enclosed, you're still stuck in them, and so having your options limited in terms of how you're going to move through a situation. I like that Connery, and this comes with his reserved performance too, is that he's most reserved in this film than I've seen him in most anything else, because he takes the time to analyze every option in a room. Yeah. I like that. I appreciate his slow burn character depth.
I still dig it when he fights the bad guy in the kitchen and he has a shotgun. Knock it over. That's the best thing ever.
Well, he probably asked him, "Can I use a Bond line?" And they're like, "No Bond lines." And he's like, "Can I just say something then?" "Sure." "Okay." Like,
but right, I still you can appreciate it for being a sci-fi. You can appreciate for appreciate for a western, and it's your effective use of Sean Connery. He doesn't have to do very much, other than running, a lot of stunts, a lot of physical, and show off his sneakers.
Yeah, but I do keep going back to that scene where he talks to his wife on the video screen, and everybody makes fun of the kid because the kid's got a pretty bad performance when he talks to his son, but Connery's performance there, he's not acting to another person, he's acting to a prop, and it's very strong to see that he's torn, to see that he's fully willing to accept the sacrifice he has to make, and maybe lose his family in order to do what's right for the situation. And again, it's a question that's not solved. It's Team Iron Man kind of a thing, where it's like you see both sides of this issue, and him being able to perform to a prop with that kind of emotionality. It made me reminded me of Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar, where he's watching those videos of his kids as they grow up around him, and again, like, you get that moment where he has to act at a prop, and he does it such a believable way. I really like that performance. I'm going to keep going back to it.
And his quarters where he lives is almost, like Fifth Element.
That's true. Yep.
Corbin Dallas is almost Element, but it's a little more in Fifth Element. It's a little more bright.
But see, there it is too. Alien have a little bit of inspiration to Heavy Metal, another film we talked about. Heavy Metal gave a lot of inspiration to Fifth Element. Like, it's funny to think about how much sci-fi from the 70s, 80s, and 90s is jam-packed with this, like, we're stealing elements from other movies to make another unique film. And we look at all these films as unique, and they are, but they all kind of have the same skeleton of inspiration.
Of where they go, right?
know?
Because you can see this is from High Noon, which is a 1950s Western. And you can see all the little points of where you're going. And like I said, if you enjoy sci-fi, this is one of the movies I think you should be required to see.
Yeah.
And if you like Alien, without Alien,
Yeah, but then too, without Star Wars' grimy space, we wouldn't have Aliens' grimy space. If any of these movies were made 10 years earlier before Star Wars, we might have had a much more like vibrant, beautiful-looking mining colony. Yeah. You know, we have a very different visual aesthetic because everything's kind of like cherry-picked. It's kind of like how we talk about every story's been told, it's how you tell it. Every sci-fi movie has the same aesthetic. It's just which parts you choose to make your set with. You know?
And it borrows a lot from Metropolis. So, you know, the miners working in the slums and pacing, and they're acting mechanical, and they know, and desolate. And they only get enjoyment of using the drugs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say editing saves the movie.
Okay.
Stuart Bard, who we talked about with Altered States, who was a producer. He's not the editor, he's a producer, but Stuart Bard is another one of his great movies that he edited. It's a well-edited movie. And I would say a lot more things we can talk about, you know, the characters and everything, but edited very well. There's never a dull point. You understand all the, you know, interests. Even when he goes back to cell and sees the guy, you know, in this.
Well, and that's the thing is, I feel like there's places. I feel like they're watching the movie. I felt like it could be trimmed, but then I couldn't think of anywhere to trim.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, I feel like it could be shorter, but I'm not sure where I would cut it. So I can't really fault it. I do think everything has a through line. Every scene feeds into the next scene. It doesn't feel like there's fat in the movie. It's all meat, you know?
And that cross-cutting, like him loading the shotgun.
Yeah,
Where somebody with somebody, and you have the tension of, you know, the people coming, but then you cut back to him continuing to load the shotgun. That's very clever editing, because then you keep the intensity, and you can break up, you know, where you're going.
Well, and it goes back to your Western argument, too. You know, the gun is very important to a Western. The gun is your avenue for survival.
And how you handle it.
Yep.
Yeah, so
and
you know you're comfortable with it.
Even though we get a shotgun, which is not something you see in many Westerns, we get this kind of similar interplay of like, I've got to load quickly, I've got to protect myself, I've got to figure this out. It's all interplay with that.
Yeah, and like I said, the beginning looks very much like Alien, even when the
title cards
and,
that might be the same. I mean, I know we have Jerry Goldsmith doing the music, so again, we're already taking more elements. But that title sequence feels like Alien. We got the names over the title, and we got a slowly forming title card over there, and it's very obvious. I can't believe there wasn't a lawsuit.
And of course, when you watch it, nothing looks very clean. Even though things are cleaned up, it doesn't look clean at all.
Yep.
Even though their uniforms and everything and stuff, things really look.
One even argues that you could think if this film was made before the dirty space aesthetic, that maybe it wouldn't be a mining colony. It might have been something more serene, you know, and more like bright and shiny instead of a mining colony. Because a mining colony fits what's going on with this movie. But if we made this 10, 20 years earlier, when we had shiny space, all pretty, would it have been a mining colony, or would it have maybe been some other thing, you know?
Right. Yeah. So once again, it's one of my favorite sci-fi movies of the '80s. It's kind of forgotten about. I don't think a lot of people remember it, but it's enjoyable. Yeah. It's a one of those things that I can see. It has a cult following to it, obviously, and people who always say, "Hey, you like Alien? You'll love this movie."
I enjoyed it for what it was. I found it to be like one of those issues of, do I like more things or do I dislike more things? And I found myself, there's more to like, technically speaking, in the film. I wish there was maybe something more to the mystery that wasn't guessable so early on. Because I just found myself thinking this is exactly how the movie's going to play out.
The mystery is not so much of a mystery.
Very unclever mystery, because it just feels like so many other mysteries we've had before. And that we've had since. And maybe that's a flaw of me just having seen the film for the first time. But I was just kind of like underwhelmed by that. Everything else in the movie worked really well. It's just that story is so important to me that drags the film down to a point where I'm so much more mixed because of it.
But I get a lot of everybody's side characters, subplots, and their meanings, and you know Peter Boyle. I'm doing good for the company's good sakes, and they are going to look the other way. I'm making profits for them, and the doctor is just worn out and a wreck from having to deal with all this, and the sheriff who wants one heroic deed before he goes out.
Yep. Yeah, I've worked at a couple companies like this. So, so what did you think about Outland from 1981? We want to know your thoughts on the film down below in the comments. And let us know if there's any other films that you feel kind of belong in the cinematic universe with Alien and Outland.
If you love Sean Connery, this is a Sean Connery movie all the way. It's the right amount of Sean Connery, too.
Yeah. Just too much, not too little.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And while you're down checking out those comments, don't forget, as Nick mentioned before, like, subscribe, and check out that Patreon as well for the rest of the year, for the rest of our season 3 in 2021. If you join the Patreon at any tier, you will get one selected Patreon choice. But if you join at the $5 tier and up, you'll be on our constant rotation for Patreon choices. So look at those options down below, and be sure to let us know your thoughts.
Yeah. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. You can find all my film reviews on goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my podcast, the St. Paul Filmcast, anywhere you find podcasts.
All right. Thanks for joining us.